Hi, I'm Actor Greasley. Now, I'm not an historian or an archaeologist, but I do tend to carry out a lot of historical research as a graphic artist, 3D CGI developer, and documentary video maker. During the course of 2014, I'm gathering material for a project I'm working on to produce an independent video production entitled The Salt Revolution. And it arrived, the Saltaire World Heritage Weekender 2014. You gonna join me? Salt's Mill and the workers' village of Saltaire was built by Sir Titus Salt between 1853 and 1876. In the latter days of 2001, Saltaire won the accolade of becoming a World Heritage Site. Today it's a living, working and industrious village-based community. And an event such as this certainly requires the commitment, dedication and generosity of volunteers from both the local and surrounding communities. And here we are. The United Reformed Church. Built by Titus in 1859. Now, you have to admit, this is a cracking piece of Italianate architecture. It's also where you're going to find the Salt family mausoleum, looked over by a really fine example of a pre-Raphaelite marble angel. Now, I'm pleased to say that she's just undergone a considerable amount of restoration. And doesn't she look good for it? The church is an active and varied congregation, and whilst I may not be a God-fearing man, I do confess to feeling a slight tinge of envy towards those who find solace and comfort in such surroundings. Titus's presence is evident both at the point of entering and exiting the church, and as its benefactor, I believe is a place rightly earned. For those of you who haven't yet visited Saltaire, let's use this 3D CGI model to get our bearings. Now, I have to say, this model, still in development, depicts the village during the early 1900s, and some of the buildings, well, they were demolished some time ago. We're already familiar with the United Reformed Church, so starting at the bottom, we can see the River Aire, the old boathouse, and New Mill. The old bridge which crossed the River Aire at the bottom of Victoria Road was one of the structures that didn't survive the 1960s. Today, you cross the river on this steel footbridge. Next, we have the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, built in 1774, a good 80 years before Saltaire. Often overlooked are the old stables and cottages. Now, the stables have been converted into private living accommodation and are therefore not accessible by the public. Here we have the Tourist Information Centre, which occupies Titus's old offices. Salt's workers had their own purpose-built canteen, and they would have entered the building not through this door, but through another, which I'll let you discover when you visit. Directly opposite is the iconic and in its day highly celebrated Salt's Mill. Today it's home to the 1853 Gallery. Opened in 1856, Saltaire's train station was then closed in 1965 as part of the Beeching Cuts. It reopened in 1984, but the original station building and iron footbridge sadly didn't survive. The old Sunday School is another building which hasn't survived to present day, instead making way for a car park and public conveniences. Built as a memorial to Titus in 1886, the Mill Workers Recreational Centre and Gymnasium is better known today as Shipley College, and yes, it was built in a hole. Titus also built almshouses for his retired mill workers, and he even built a hospital which, in 1923, underwent some major renovations and seems to have gained a level in the process. Another building long since gone is the Wesleyan Chapel, fronting Saltaire Road. Built between 1866 and 1868 by public conscription, the land had in fact been donated by Sir Titus Salt. And finally, at least for the moment, there's the old schoolhouse and the Mechanics Institute, also known as Salt Building, which is part of the Shipley College, and Victoria Hall. And these two buildings are watched over by Saltaire's very own Pride of Lions: war, peace, vigilance and determination. I have to say, the first day of the event started out a little bit wet and miserable, and as organisers made ready, I took the opportunity to grab a few retro-style photographs of the mill and village. Now don't quote me on this, but I had heard that organiser Robert Martin had actually pre-booked some fine and sunny weather to arrive around about 11 AM. And for local businesswoman Angela Walmsley, that's good news, as she's keen to inform as many visitors to her stand about the Totally Locally initiative. With little or no gardens attached to the mill workers' houses, Titus made the provision of allotments for his workers to grow their own fruit and veg. Today, however, not everyone in the village has access to an allotment, and A Taste of Saltaire is another local initiative to establish areas in and around the village where residents can come together and grow their own food in a sustainable way.
Stop your crying. Papa, Papa,
You know, I think it's going to turn out just fine. Right, well, I'm going to pop down to the canal. I've always seen the Leeds and Liverpool Canal as one of this region's strongest assets, and I've never understood why there isn't regular barge trips for visitors to enjoy. Well, that may be about to change. But for now, I'm just going to enjoy the moment and ambience. As the weather begins to clear, a cloud lingers over Robert's head. He's just received news that one of the event's main attractions may not be arriving. Alpaca are not only a popular visitor attraction, they're what made Titus Salt's fortune. In fact, Saltaire's very foundations are built upon the wool of the alpaca. An alpaca no-show may affect artist Lou Sumray's free workshop where children can have fun decorating cardboard cutouts of alpacas. It would also mean local first aiders Carol and Janet had more time to discuss bikini lines, baling wire and local cuisine. Ooh, I am so dead. I believe that having one eye on the past and another on the present, you develop a wiser inner eye that will help you determine the future. Over the years, members of the Saltaire Historical Society have amassed an impressive and quite comprehensive historical archive, and it's during such events that they proudly display some of what has been accumulated. It's a local treasure trove. It's where eyes of the past briefly engage with eyes of the present. And it's where those whose journey through life are now able to place names with faces and to recount and share those days, events and memories of long ago. I'm off across the River Aire to Roberts Park to catch up with one of the stars of the weekend.
The horse is called Bilbo, short for Bilbo Baggins, as in from the story and the film of The Hobbits.
Boat horse Bilbo Baggins and Sue Day, who together in 2012 took the 128-mile journey pulling a barge along the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, something which hadn't been done in nearly 70 years. Initially here to give a brief harnessing demonstration and then have Bilbo pull a barge along a short stretch of the Leeds and Liverpool. But a large fire in Armley, Leeds a few days earlier had severely polluted the canal, and Sue's barge was unable to make the journey to Saltaire. But I'll tell you this, after picking dandelions, seeing Bilbo and listening to Sue, you didn't need a barge. Amid the sounds of leather on willow and calls of "How's that?" I can distinctly hear something more choral in the air. Worth investigating.
Už vydá bude slunce, už vydá bude neba, už vydá bude mama, už vydá budu já, už vydá bude slunce, už vydá bude neba, už vydá bude mama, už vydá budu já, už vydá bude slunce, už vydá bude neba, už vydá.
Well, that was the Bradford Voices, rehearsing for their show here at the Shipley Glen Tramways later this afternoon. Some of my earliest and happiest memories are of here, and in a few months' time, I'm going to be spending a couple of days working alongside and filming the volunteers of this 119-year-old national treasure. But for now, let's enjoy a little bit more homegrown street entertainment. Well, if your feet weren't tapping to that, have someone check your pulse. Well, I made my way back up Victoria Road and popped into the craft fair in Victoria Hall for a cup of tea and a slice of cake, before Aunt Sally scoffs the lot. It's an age thing. The craft fair is a monthly event organised by Phil Wilkinson, and very popular it is too. I'd no sooner got my feet under the table when someone came over and whispered in my ear, "Alpaca." Well, there was no sign of a sudden stampede, so I quietly made my way down to the URC. Here's Carol and Janet, looking happy. And that's looking promising. That's Maria, who's an expert at cleaning brass knobs and knockers. Mission accomplished. The alpaca have arrived. Okay, who just went, "Ah"? And that's about it. I've got some great footage for my main production, and this event, well, that's set me up nicely for the Saltaire Festival in September. I hope you've enjoyed. I'll catch you later.